The Weekly Hugh Demon.
Welcome. Happy to get this episode out the door this week. It's covering for a law partner who's down in Florida, and I'm covering on the home front for Marie, who's out in Colorado. Moving my daughter into Denver. She's going to be attending the Augustine Institute. We have a good show this week. We're starting off with about a 10-minute discussion regarding introversion, extroversion. And I warn you right now, I bring in another podcaster, segments from one of his shows. The audio quality is not quite as high as mine. Maybe it's because second generation, I'm not sure. So you may need to turn your dial up just a little bit. The segments are short. He's in there for like 45 seconds, 55 seconds. It's not bad quality. Just got to turn the dial up on your volume just a little bit. We're also going to be hitting Gnosticism again and some Deconstructionism. I think you're going to enjoy the show. As always, thanks for listening. Matt Walsh, you are the man. My kids and my wife have been at me for quite a while to listen to Matt Walsh, and I'd read some of his columns, and I always enjoyed them, and I just never really got around to it for some reason. Then last Sunday evening, I'm talking to my son Alex, and I can't remember how it came up. Oh, it had to do about hand-holding during Mass in last week's podcast. And Alex goes, y'all listen to Matt Walsh. I think he talked about something about small talk during Mass or something like that, because I think you'd enjoy it. So I pulled it up, and it was like a 20-minute thing about how introverts don't like small talk. And he just laid it right out, and it was like he was describing me to a T. And I'm going to play an excerpt here, which I've never done before on the podcast. I'm going to play an excerpt, about a 2-minute excerpt from his podcast about why introverts don't like small talk. And the guy freaking nails it. And I told my wife, on Sunday nights, I'm kind of bummed out. You got the Sunday evening blues, got a long work week ahead of me. I was so excited right before going to bed. I was concerned I wouldn't be able to get to sleep that night. Marie was out in Colorado at the time. I texted her and said, you got to listen to this podcast by Matt Walsh. He describes me better than I could have described myself. It all comes down to introverts and extroverts, which is something, those are terms I've known for 40-some years. I know what introverts and extroverts, but he goes through and he explained what an introvert really is. It's not a shy person. It's not someone who dislikes people. And he explains what an introvert is and why introverts don't like small talk. And again, I was just absolutely stunned. So let me play you this excerpt.
Being an introvert means that you draw energy from quiet, from solitude, from being alone with your thoughts and your imagination. You like silence. You like to think. Interacting with people drains you. That doesn't mean that you hate interacting with people or that you never want to or that you want to be a hermit out in the woods, although there's a certain part of me that would find that appealing, but it doesn't mean that that all introverts would like to be hermits. It just means that you have a very limited supply of interacting energy. Okay, you have a finite supply of that kind of energy for the day, and so you prefer to use it wisely.
I was like, wow, that's me. And I'm just stunned. I'm in my early 50s. I'm a rabid reader, have been for 30 years. This type of stuff is stuff I would read about, and I had no idea that's what an introvert was. And I had been looking myself in the face my entire life. Again, I found it absolutely stunning, the way this guy described it. That I have a finite supply of energy. That's me. Around the holidays, it's constant small talk, constant interaction. By the time I go off to my in-laws, who are a bunch of extroverts, I'm kaput. It's like I burned all the sociability I had. I don't draw energy from it. And I remember going to my spiritual advisor after the holidays and just saying, it's just when I don't have that downtime, whether it's prayer or study or reading, whatever, when I don't have that downtime, just, it's like my whole system, my whole psychological system just shuts right down. I say, I don't know what's wrong with me. And he, I think, is also an introvert, and I don't think he thinks in terms of introvert and extrovert. And he basically said, no, don't feel bad. I'm kind of the same way, and lots of people are. And here we probably were just two introverts who just like to have our downtime. And we draw energy from the downtime, so we don't get it. We're just absolutely kaput, and we're absolutely drained. Again, I'm just stunned that all these years I've been suffering or enjoying this malady or this blessing, whatever you want to call it, and I didn't know what it was. I'm going to play you another excerpt from the same podcast from Matt Walsh. It's about another 1-minute excerpt.
Second thing, we are up in our heads all the time, constantly. And we like that. We like to be there thinking and imagining and wondering, whatever. It's not a self-absorbed thing. It's not like we're always thinking about ourselves. We could be thinking about anything. We could be thinking about the news or about a family member or about God or about walruses. I mean, really, who knows? We could be thinking about anything. But if you rip us out of that, then we'd prefer it if you have a good reason. The moment you start talking to us, you have ripped us out of our thought process. And I don't think it's unreasonable that we would prefer, if you're going to do that you have a reason for doing it. And so if you have to relay important information to us, that's a reason. If you want to have a real meaningful conversation, that's a reason. But if the reason is just to make an observation about the weather, if the reason is just to say, oh, it's raining outside, well, then maybe we're a little put off by that.
Hallelujah to that. I tell you, I had a coworker, and this girl, she could not walk by my office without popping in. She popped in literally 5, 10, 15 times a day. One time, I'm sitting at my desk, and I'm not just, an introvert kind of in my head. I'm like in the zone because I'm looking like at a tax code or some terribly complicated reorg regulation. I don't know what it was, but I'm just like trying to concentrate. She popped in just to say, hey, looks like you're concentrating pretty hard there. And I was like, get the hell out of my office. Stop bopping in here constantly and, like Walsh says, ripping me out of my universe. Again, it's shockingly considerate, but the girl's like a full-on extrovert. And I remember joking to my wife. I said, I think if I don't talk to her at least 3 times a day, 5 times, 10 times a day, I think she looks at like I'm taking her oxygen away from her. And now, because of Walsh, I understand it. She is a full-on extrovert. She has a constant need to bop in and talk. Always, always, always. Whereas I'm a full-on introvert, perhaps. Although Marie disagrees. She goes, Eric, you have more extrovert traits than you know, although she definitely thinks I'm onto something here. But I think I really was, because I started to close my door. It's like, stop coming in here all the freaking time. You're breaking my concentration. You're ripping me out of my introvert zone. Sometimes you're pulling me out of the flow, as Winifred Gallagher talks about it in her book Wrapped, by needing to stop it. But by doing that, she as an extrovert, I'm actually like depriving her of her energy, her blood, because she needs that interaction. Now there's like 10 other people in the office she can interact with, so let them deal with it. But I found that, highly interesting when Matt pointed out that extroverts get their energy from interaction, introverts get it from being introspective, so to speak, or downtime, being alone with their own thoughts, and those two just clash. I don't know how to resolve it. By the way, Wikipedia corroborates everything Matt Walsh says. They go into a little bit more detail and stuff, and those who read my blog know that I'm a big Wikipedia fan. Those who knock it because anyone can change it whenever they want, they're not getting it. They haven't read the studies about how reliable Wikipedia really is. But Wikipedia corroborates all this. But it says a lot about, my history. Youth sports, for instance. I just hated going to my kids' athletic functions. There's nothing more painful than on a Saturday morning, especially if I'm a little hungover, and I have to go to the soccer field and to stand on the sideline while the kids run up and down playing soccer. And I can handle that okay. I'm not a soccer guy by any stretch, but I don't mind, watching soccer, especially my 1 or 2 of my kids are playing. That's fine. But dang it, you always got the guy walking up. He has the mug of coffee in his hand with the elbow propped out, at the 90-degree angle. and he wants to small talk for an hour, and I just find it absolutely freaking draining, and I didn't know what it was. Some of my kids, play football or basketball. I would actually go sit on the opposite side because I just did not want to deal with an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of small talk. One time my kid was looking to play travel ball, and one of the parents approached me. Heck of a nice guy. I really liked him. He's like, you gotta get your kid to travel ball. He goes, we have a great time. It's like a family. Every weekend, we do everything together. Friday night, we get to Battle Creek or, Chicago, wherever the tournament is, and we go out and we have drinks and dinner, and then first thing in the morning, we're back together and we're having breakfast together. Then we spend all day in the stands watching our boys play baseball, and it's like a big family. We're together all the time. And they really wanted my son because he was really freaking good at baseball. They wanted him to play it. You're saying everything you possibly can to make sure my kid does not play travel ball, because that what you're describing to me is hell. And now I know why. I didn't know why. I thought all these years I was just kind of a jerk. I think my wife would assure me of that. But nope, I'm just an introvert. Anyway, so Matt Walsh, if you listen to this, hats off to you, my friend. I really appreciate you setting me straight on this. I've been going through getting my notes around about Gnosticism and working in some Deconstructionism of Jacques Derrida. And I realized I think there's a lot of overlap between the materials, and I started typing up some notes after my Theology on Tap session a week and a half ago. And I quickly realized that I can't get it all into one episode. And in fact, I don't think I can get it into 2 episodes, and it might take 3 or 4 episodes. I'm guessing I have about 15-20 minutes of script and ideas to flush out. So this will probably be part 2 of a 5-part series on Gnosticism, but there's going to be a lot of deconstructionism thrown in with it. Today I want to talk about Jacques Derrida's hatred of binaries. And if you follow like the LGBTQ stuff, you can realize when it comes to binaries, that's really kind of a hot button. And that's because of Derrida. Derrida hated binaries. And what are binaries? They're things that are opposites. High-low, true-false, right-left, west-east, male-female, mind-body, inside-outside, positive-negative. Derrida hated binaries. And he'd probably say, I didn't hate binaries. I just think they're ludicrous because you break them down through language, and I'll get to that later. But binaries, suffice to say, were his favorite whipping boy. And his whole dislike of binaries is that he thought the entire Western intellectual tradition had been built on a thing called logocentrism, where you posit a central idea, and then you posit the opposite of that idea. And it's the opposite of the idea that then gets derided. So like male and female. Male is like the logocentrist idea, and female is its ugly counterpart. So mind-body. Mind, rationality, that's the ideal. And the ugly side is passion and body. That's the opposite of that. He thought thinkers and schools of thought would then build their systems based on that foundation of this binary. Derrida then went into language and showed basically every word breaks down because every word refers back to some other word. And that word goes back to some other word. And so each word really has no meaning in and of itself. Therefore, the binary, which is built on words, has no meaning in and of itself. That's, in essence, his deconstructionist breakdown of the binary. In this regard, he really liked what, I believe it was him, if not him, his followers called undecidables. These are things that don't fit into either binary. LGBTQ, XYZ, whatever it is. In that movement, they want a whole fluid spectrum of genders. 70 different genders, but they do not want the male-female binary. And through the works of Jacques Derrida, they would break down any allegation, like from me saying there is a male and female. They'd break it down by, what do you mean by male? What do you mean by female? And yada, 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 it goes on and on. But they like the undecidables. Those would be like the cross-dressers, guys who identify as females because they have both traits. one book, Introduction to Derrida, said zombies are great undecidable. In today's cinematic universe, it's a great example. What are zombies? The binary is life and death, but these zombies, they ain't alive, they ain't dead. What exactly are they? So if you want to think of what is an undecidable, well, it's a zombie. Although it's impossible to posit when modern thinking began, a lot of people would point to Descartes. Descartes is often looked at as the seminal modern thinker, and I think Derrida himself may have done that. Again, but I'm still trying to figure Derrida out. I'm not exactly there yet, although I've spent more time reading about Jacques Derrida than I ever thought I would. But I think it's fair to say that modern thinking was obsessed with binaries because of Descartes' dualism. Remember, Descartes' logocentrist idea was, I think, therefore I am. The binary that created was mind-body, a strict dualism. I remember reading about one card who was criticizing Descartes and said, hey, Descartes, I think I just saw your mind going down the road in a carriage. Because, Descartes distinguished mind and body so distinctly. And it's like, no, obviously, according to people at that time and to the medievals and the ancients, the two are wrapped together. But Descartes posited this staunch dualism between mind and body, thereby creating the split, creating a binary, which I believe was one of the favorite whipping boys of Derrida. But the real takeaway from this segment is, what Descartes did was rejection of the sacramental view of creation. As a Catholic, or as a Christian in general, we don't view creation in terms of spiritual and mundane. We don't have that strict dualism. We have a sacramental view. Our God is an incarnate God. Spiritual God taking human form in the form of Christ. Mind, body wrapped together inextricably. We have a creation that we look at as being innately good because it was created by God, who himself is perfect and all goodness. Therefore, he couldn't create something that was in any way, shape, or form evil. That is our view of reality. That is truth. The Cartesian modern mindset destroys the sacramental, and I think that innately rubs people the wrong way. People, if they can't even articulate it, they know something's wrong here. So when Derrida comes by and smashes the binaries born of the Cartesian dualism, a lot of people just intuited this is a good thing. And I think even though it's taking on these perverse characteristics that we'll talk about later, I think it resounded or it resonated with people because they know this Cartesian dualism is just wrong. They know it because the sacramental view of creation, of reality, is correct. That is truth. They don't understand that, but they feel it, they intuit it. Hence, Derrida found a very receptive audience. Something new for me. I'm not going to wait till next week to do the third part of this deconstructionist Gnosticism, primarily because I'm concerned that y'all are going to forget what I said this week. And ideally, I want each podcast to stand on its own. So I'm going to go into part 3 of this 5-part deconstructionism Gnosticism analysis. So what do you get when you combine deconstructionism and modern Gnosticism? How about the LGBTQXYZ movement? Let's go through the 6 traits of Gnosticism. The Gnostic is dissatisfied with life. Well, that's kind of obvious. Exhibit A, most lesbians. And not just the ones who got cut from the softball team. 2, the Gnostic blames the world, not him, her, or itself. The world is poorly organized, or evil, or really non-existent. Again, this is obvious. The transsexual Gnostic, or whatever you want to call the person, thinks the binary, heterosexual, homosexual, male, female has completely screwed him over. So it's the world's fault they're not happy. They believe salvation is possible. Yeah, get rid of the binary. Homosexual, heterosexual, get rid of male, female, get rid of that binary, and just have this gender fluidity. 4, the Gnostic believes that this salvation is possible, but with wholesale change. Yep. We need Supreme Court rulings. We need legislation. We need demonstrations. We need Hollywood to relentlessly ram this stuff down our throats. 5, you change it by human action. Yep, those things I just mentioned. And then you shout down ruthlessly anyone who disagrees with you, so there's no other even perceived opinion out there. You have to create this, Gnostic paradise by remaking the order of existence, by getting rid of any sort of dissent. You gotta make a new world order, so to speak. And 6, it's always informed by knowledge. The special knowledge here is Derrida's hatred of binary, deconstructionism. So anyway, I found it pretty fascinating, and to be honest, I hadn't made the LGBTQ Gnostic connection until I was getting ready for that Theology on Tap lecture. And when I did, I was like, wow, yeah, they're Gnostics, full bore. And by the way, be careful. Don't look at every political opponent you have and say, oh, you're a Gnostic. You've been mucking things up since 100 AD. That's not fair. Try to apply these 6 elements to identify a Gnostic, and I will warn you, Vogelin himself kind of waffled on the 6 elements, intentionally so. He said, I'm not sure that those are quite accurate, and I think until the day he died, he was still working through the various formulas, trying to get it right. Let's finish up with some enlightening segments. Hey, for starters, I want to make it clear, I did not yell at my coworker when she bopped in and said, hey, it looks like you're concentrating pretty hard there. I did not yell. I just kind of smiled and nodded. Internally, I wanted to say those things. Externally, she just merely saw me start to weep inconsolably. I've already given you a podcast recommendation, The Matt Walsh Show. But now I'm going to give you a Spotify playlist recommendation. It's Fulton Sheen. Just go into Spotify, type in Fulton Sheen, and you'll see Life Was Worth Living. They have a huge selection. I think it's the biggest I've ever seen. And I've been listening to Fulton Sheen reruns from the 1950s and 60s for a decade now, I guess. And the recording quality is high. If you go online, a lot of these Fulton Sheen recordings are all scratchy, like they're off a phonograph, and they're horrible quality. The quality here is really good. I mean, not perfect by any stretch, but very good. The only drawback is I think these recordings of Life Are Worth Living are from the 1960s. He had the 1950s show. He won an Emmy in 1952 when he was broadcasting with the Dumont Television Network, which is they call it the Forgotten Network. You have ABC, CBS, NBC, and Dumont. Dumont's gone. But when Dumont folded, ABC picked up in the 1960s after a couple-year gap. I'm guessing these are from the 1960s. They're not as funny. Fulton Sheen he was brilliant for starters. And he has had a great camera presence, and he was funny and witty. And these 1960s are far more serious, far more have a fire and brimstone type feel to them. But I've listened to lots of them and really like them. Highly recommend you go check it out. And I'm probably going to talk more about Fulton Sheen next week. Hey, huge feast day coming up Monday. St. Thomas Aquinas. Even the Anglicans recognize him as a saint, even though he wasn't into cross-dressing. Podcast recommendation, although I've never listened to it. I really need to, but I've never listened to it. It's called Pints with Aquinas. My kids love it. Go check out Pints with Aquinas. I'm going to take my kids' word for it. That's worth checking out. And since this episode was really hawked on dualism and binaries, I think Aquinas and I are good binaries. He was a saint, I'm not. He was brilliant, I'm not. He was fat, I'm ripped. He was celibate, I'm not. So you can judge for yourself which half of the dichotomy is the ideal form. And which of us by our inferiority helps define the ideal form. Hey, I was a bit hard on Augustine's "He who sings prays twice." Yes, I'm right. We have no indication from Augustine's words that he ever said such a thing. From my understanding, there's nothing even that would imply he thought such a thing, much less saying those exact words. But the legend that he said it goes back, like hundreds of years. Maybe 1,000 years that people have said he said this. And I've learned never ever write off legend. You just never know. If something's a strong legend, there's a good chance there is some truth behind it. If you want an example, just think of the Battle of Troy. Everyone just assumed that was mythology. 19th century archaeology is like, there probably was a Battle of Troy. In fact, there may have been more than one Battle of Troy, and there's like 9 layers of Troy that they found, and which one was the battle site, etc., etc. So, never write off legends, and I probably shouldn't have been so harsh in writing off the Augustine legend that he said those words, "He who sings prays twice," even though I don't think he ever did. One of my favorite, while I'm on the topic, one of my favorite legends that may have been vindicated is St. George. St. George who slayed the dragon. G.K. Chesterton wrote a poem about it, and it's the only non-Nantucket poem I've ever committed to memory, or at least the first verse. It goes like this. St. George he was for England, and before he slayed the dragon, he drank a pint of English ale out of an English flagon. For though he fast mightily in hair shirt or in mail, it isn't safe to give him cakes unless you give him ale. So the St. George legend is that he killed a dragon. And everyone's like, ha ha ha, stupid Catholics, he didn't kill a dragon. Well, not so fast. Many anthropologists think the whole dragon legend came from Europeans first catching sight of alligators. Alligators can swim enormous distances, and maybe they actually swam across the Mediterranean. We know they swam over to the Holy Land 1,000, 2,000 years ago. Very conceivable that someone who became known to us as St. George actually killed one of these monster crocodiles. And therefore the legend came down that, he killed a dragon. Obviously it wasn't a dragon, but it was a crocodile, which are pretty freaking scary. Just a quick correction, I think you picked up on it. I said alligator about St. George. I meant to say crocodile. That's it for the show. Thanks for listening. If you have not done so yet, please go to iTunes, The Weekly Demon, and leave a review and give it a rating. I'm told that helps boost The Weekly Demon in the search engines. Also, we have a Facebook page. If you can go like it, that would be great. Go to Twitter and follow us. If you're still listening to the old TWE feed, that's fine. I'll keep that going for a little bit longer. There's still like 24 of you lingering over there, and that's okay. But eventually that feed will go away, so I'd encourage you to go follow the new feed, The Weekly Demon with Eric Chesky. Also, check out our website, udemonpodcast.com. You can find show notes and other information that I think you'll enjoy. Thanks for listening.